Hare Krishna, Prabhu, please accept my humble obeisances. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Okay, let's start with the Mangalacharan prayers. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Agnanatimirandasya Gyananjana Salakaya Chakshurun Miritam Yena Tasmai Sri Gurave Namaha. Sri Chaitanya Manobhistam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Svayam Rupa Kadamahyam Darati Svaparantikam. Vandeham Sri Guru Sri Yutapatakamalam Sri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Sri Rupam Sagrijatam Sagana Raghunathanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savarutam Parijana Sahitam Sri Krishna Chaitanya Devam Sri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Sri Visakanvitamscha. He Krishna Karuna Sindho Dinabandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gourangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrisabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Haripriye Vancha Kalpatarupyascha Kripa Sindhupya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Namam Vishnu Padaya Krishna Pristaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Nitinamine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvisesha Shunyavadi Pashatya Rishatarine Jai Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaitat Kadadar Srivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna Vishnu Prabhu, please accept my humble obeisances. All glories to Srila Prabhupada.
Hare Krishna Prabhu, Srila Prabhupada.
Today we continue Narada Bhakti Sutra with Sutra number 5. Yat prapya na kinchit vanshati na sochati na dveshti na ramate notsahi bhavati. Word to word. Yat, which. Prapya, having attained. Na kinchit, nothing. Vanchati, hankers for. Na sochati, does not lament. Na dveshti, does not hate. Na ramate, does not rejoice. Na, not. Utsahi, materially enthusiastic. Bhavati, becomes. Translation. A person engaged in such pure devotional service neither desires anything for sense gratification, nor laments for any loss, nor hates anything, nor enjoys anything on his personal account, nor becomes very enthusiastic in material activity. Yes, this is really nice verse. Purport. According to Srila Rupa Goswami, there are 6 impediments to the discharge of devotional service, and also 6 activities favorable to progress in devotional service. The first impediment is adyahara, overeating or accumulating more wealth than we need. When we give free rein to the senses in an effort to enjoy the highest degree, we become degraded. A devotee should therefore eat only enough to maintain his body and soul together. He should not allow his tongue unrestricted license to eat anything and everything it likes. The Bhagavad Gita and the great acharyas or spiritual masters have prescribed certain foods for human beings, and one who eats these foods in the mode of goodness. These foods include grains, fruits, vegetables, milk products, and sugar, and nothing more. A devotee does not eat extravagantly. He simply eats what he offers to the Supreme Lord Krishna. He is interested in Krishna Prasadam, food offered to the Lord, and not in satisfying his tongue. Therefore, he does not desire anything extraordinary to eat. Similarly, a devotee does not wish to accumulate a large bank balance. He simply earns as much as he requires. This is called yavad artha or yuktahara. In the material world, everyone is very active in earning more and more money, and in increasing eating and sleeping and gratifying the senses. Such is the mission of most people's lives. But these activities should be absent from the life of a devotee. The next impediment Srila Rupa Goswami mentions is prayasa, endeavoring very hard for material things. A devotee should not be very enthusiastic about attaining any material goal. He should not be like persons who engage in fruitive activities, who work very hard day and night to attain material rewards. All such persons have some ambition to become a very big businessman, to become a great industrialist, to become a great poet or philosopher, but they do not know that even if their ambition is fulfilled, the result is temporary. As soon as the body is finished, all material achievements are also finished. No one takes with him anything he has achieved materially in this world. The only thing he can carry with him is his asset of devotional service that alone is never vanquished. The next impediment to devotional service is prajalpa, talking of mundane subject matter. Many people unnecessarily talk of the daily happenings in the newspapers and pass the time without any profit. A devotee who, however, does not indulge in unnecessary talks of politics or economics, nor is a devotee very strict in following ritualistic rules and regulations mentioned in the Vedas. Becoming enamored of these rituals is the next impediment, called niyamagraha. Because a devotee fully engages in the supreme service of the Lord, he automatically fulfills all other obligations and does not have to execute all the details of Vedic rituals, as the Srimad Bhagavatam 11.541 says. Devarishi putapta nirnam pitrinam nakinkaro nayam rini charajan sarvatmanaya sharanam sharanyam gato mukundam parihrityakartam. Every human being born in this world is immediately indebted to the demigods, the great sages, ordinary living entities, the family, society, and so on. But a person who surrenders unto the lotus feet of the Lord and engages fully in his service is no longer indebted to anyone. In other words, he has no obligations to fulfill except executing devotional service. Finally, a devotee should not be greedy, lolyam, nor should he mix with ordinary materialistic men, jnana sangha. These are 6 negatives or do nots for the devotee. Therefore, one who wants to attain the perfectional stage of love of Godhead refrains from these things.
Prabhu, Hare Krishna, Prabhu, Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna Prabhu.
Prabhu, please, can you please repeat that verse where it says that, can you please tell me the verse?
This one?
Yes, this one, 11.5.41. Okay, Prabhu, thanks.
Evolve. Similarly, there are 6 positive items for advancing in devotional service. First, while one should not be enthusiastic to attain material achievements, one should be very enthusiastic to attain the perfectional stage of devotional service. This enthusiasm is called utsaha. A living entity cannot stop acting. So when he is forbidden to become enthusiastic about material achievements, he should at once be encouraged to be enthusiastic about spiritual achievements. Enthusiasm is a symptom of the living entity. It cannot be stopped. It is just like a powerful engine. If you utilize it properly, it will give immense production. Therefore, enthusiasm should be purified. Instead of employing enthusiasm for attaining material goals, one should be enthusiastic about achieving the perfectional stage of devotional service. Indeed, enthusing his devotees in devotional service is the purpose for which Krishna descends to this material world. The next item favorable for devotional service is nishchaya, confidence. When one becomes disappointed in his service to the Supreme Lord, that disappointment must be rejected and replaced with confidence in attaining the ultimate goal, love of Godhead. The devotee should patiently follow the rules and regulations of devotional service, so that the day will come when he will achieve all of a sudden all the perfection of devotional service. He should not lament for any loss or any reverse in his advancement in spiritual life. This patience, dhairya, is the third positive item for advancing in devotional service. Furthermore, a pure devotee is not envious, hateful, or lazy in the discharge of devotional service. Confident of his advancement, he continually performs his prescribed devotional duties. This is called tat karma pravartana. The last two items are sangatyaga, giving up the association of non-devotees, and satovritti, following in the footsteps of the previous acharyas. These practices greatly help the devotee remain fixed on the path of devotional service. Yes, asat sangatyaga. And avoid the tendency to enjoy temporary material things. Thus, the activities of a devotee remain always pure and without any contamination of the material world. Hare Krishna. Okay, who wants to have the next sutra?
Hare Krishna. Sutra 6. Yat jnatva matto bhavati, stabdo bhavati atma ramo bhavati. Synonyms. Yat which jnatva, having known, matta, intoxicated, bhavati becomes, stabda, stunned in ecstasy, bhavati becomes, atma arama, self-content, because of being engaged in the service of the Lord. Bhavati becomes. Translation. One who understands perfectly the process of devotional service in love of Godhead becomes intoxicated in its discharge. Sometimes he becomes stunned in ecstasy and thus enjoys his whole self, being engaged in the service of the Supreme Self. Purport. The Srimad Bhagavatam 1.7.10 states, Atma Ramascha Muneyo Nirgranda Abhi Urukrame Kuruvanti Ahedukim Bhaktim Itham Buddha Guno Hari. Although those who are Atma Rama, self-satisfied, are liberated from all material contamination, they are still attracted by the pastimes of the Supreme Lord, and thus they engage themselves in his transcendental service. When Lord Chaitanya explained this Atma Rama verse to Srila Sanatana Goswami, he described 61 meanings, and all of them point towards the devotional service of the Lord. How one becomes intoxicated in devotional service is very nicely described in the Srimad Bhagavatam 11.2.40. एवं व्रता स्वप्रिय नाम कीर्त्या जादानुरागो धृतचित्त उच्चै हसति अधोरोदिति रौदि गायति unmadavan nrityadi loga bhahya. A person engaged in the devotional service of the Lord in full Krishna consciousness automatically becomes carried away by ecstasy when he chants and hears the holy name of Krishna. His heart becomes slackened while chanting the holy name. He becomes almost like a madman, and he does not care for any outward social conventions. Thus, sometimes he laughs, sometimes he weeps, sometimes he cries out very loudly, sometimes he sings, and sometimes he dances and forgets himself. These are the signs of becoming intoxicated in devotional service. This stage, called the Atma Rama stage, is possible when the Lord bestows his mercy upon a devotee for his advanced devotional activity. It is the highest perfectional stage because one cannot reach it unless one has attained pure love of God. Neither formal religious rituals, economic development, sense gratification, nor liberation can compare with this sweet stage of perfection of love of Krishna, love of the Supreme Lord. The Chaitanya Charitamrita, Adilila 7.97, describes this stage of ecstasy and intoxication as being far above the ecstasy of realizing oneself as Brahman or the Supreme Spirit. Lord Chaitanya says that the ecstasy of bhakti, love of Godhead, is so vast that it is like an ocean compared to the drop of pleasure derived from understanding oneself as one with Brahman. In all Vedic literature, the highest perfectional stage is said to be the state of intoxication of devotional service. It is not achieved by ordinary persons, the non devotees. In the stage of perfection, one's heart becomes slackened and one becomes more and more attached to attaining the lotus feet of the Lord. Srila Rupa Goswami, a great Acharya in the line of devotional service, has described this stage as follows. Although appearing just like a madman, a person in the ecstasy of devotional service is not mad in the material conception of the term. This ecstasy is the manifestation of the pleasure potency of the Supreme Lord. The Lord has various potencies, one of which is called Ahladini Shakti, his internal pleasure potency. Only one who becomes a little conversant with this potency can taste such ecstasy. The Vedanta Sutra 1.1.12 states Anandamayo Abhyasa. By nature, the Lord is always joyful. This joyfulness of the Lord is due to his pleasure potency. One who becomes affected by the pleasure potency of the Supreme Lord manifests various symptoms of ecstasy, such as slackening of the heart, laughing, crying, shivering, and dancing. These symptoms are not material. However, exhibiting such ecstatic symptoms just to get credit from the public is not approved by pure devotees. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Prabhupada says, persons without attainment of the highest perfectional stage of loving service cannot achieve any auspiciousness simply by artificially laughing, crying, or dancing without any spiritual understanding. Artificial movement of the body must always be rejected. One should wait for the natural sequence within devotional service, and at that time, when one cries or dances or sings, it is approved. A person artificially showing symptoms of the pleasure potency creates many disturbances in the ordinary way of life. One who attains the perfectional stage of devotional service under the guidance of a bona fide spiritual master may preach the science of devotion as Lord Chaitanya did. When Lord Chaitanya preached, he danced and showed other symptoms of ecstasy. Once in Benares, a Mayavadi sannyasi named Prakashananda Saraswati objected to these activities. He said that since Lord Chaitanya had taken sannyasa, the renounced order of life, he should not act in such an intoxicated way. The Lord explained that these symptoms of intoxication had automatically arisen when he had chanted the Hare Krishna mantra, and that upon seeing this, his spiritual master had ordered him to preach devotional service all over the world. While speaking with Prakashananda, Lord Chaitanya quoted an important verse from the Hari Bhakti Shuddhodaya 14.36. Tot sakshat karanahlada vishuddhabdi स्थित स्थितस्य मे सुगानि पुष्पाद्यन्ते brahmani abhi jagat guru. My dear Lord, O Master of the universe, since I have directly seen you, my transcendental bliss has taken the shape of a great ocean. Thus, I now regard the happiness derived from understanding impersonal Brahman to be like the water contained in a calf's hoofprint. In this way, one who reaches the perfection stage of devotional service becomes so satisfied that he does not want anything more, and thus he always engages in pure devotional service. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Sujai Prabhupada Pranam, Jai Shri Prabhupada. Do you want to read the next one? Hare Krishna is Prabhu. Sutra 7. Sana kama yamana nirodharupatvat. Word to word. Sa, that devotional service in pure love of God. Na, not. Kama yamana, like ordinary lust. Nirodha, renunciation. Rupatvat, because of having as its form. Translation. There is no question of lust in the execution of pure devotional service, because in it all material activities are renounced. Purport. In pure devotional service, there is no question of sense gratification. Some people mistake the loving affairs between Krishna and the gopis, cowherd girls, for activities of ordinary sense gratification. But these affairs are not lustful because there is no material contamination, as Rupa Goswami states in his Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu 1.2.285. Premaiva Goparamanam Kama itya agamat pratam ityuttavadyopya etam vanchanti bhagavat priyaha. Although the dealings of the gopis with Krishna are wrongly celebrated by many as lust, great sages and saintly persons like Uddhava hanker for such loving affairs with Krishna. Srila Krishnadas Kaviraj, the author of Chaitanya Charitamrita, has therefore said, Kama prema, donha kara vibhinna lakshana, lauha ara hema yaiche svarupe vilakshana. As there is a difference between iron and gold, so there is a difference between material lust and Krishna's loving affairs with the gopis. Adi Lila 4:164. Although such loving affairs may sometimes resemble material lust, the difference is as follows. Atmendriya priti vancha tare bali kama, Krishnendriya priti icha dare prema nama. The desire to satisfy one's own senses is called lust, while the desire to satisfy the senses of Krishna is called prema, love of God. Chaitanya Charitamrita Adi Lila 4:165. The impersonalists cannot understand the principle of satisfying Krishna's senses because they reject the personality of Godhead. Thus they think God has no senses and therefore no sense satisfaction. But the devotees simply want to satisfy the senses of the Supreme Lord, and so they take part in the pure activities of love of Godhead. There is no question of lust in that category of pure transcendental love. Lust leads to fruitive activity for sense gratification. There are different kinds of duties for the human being, such as political applications, performance of Vedic rituals, obligations for maintaining the body, the social formalities and conventions. But all such activities are directed toward satisfying one's own senses. The gopis, however, simply wanted to satisfy Krishna's senses, and thus they completely gave up the conventional part of social restriction, not caring for their relatives or the chastisement of their husbands. They gave up everything for the satisfaction of Krishna, showing their strong attachment to Krishna to be as spotless as washed white cloths. It is said that when conjugal affection between a lover and beloved comes to the point of being destroyed and yet is not destroyed, such a relationship is pure love, or prema. In the material world, it is not possible to find this kind of love, for it exists only between Krishna and his intimate devotees, such as the gopis. The sentiment between the gopis and Krishna was so strong that it could not be destroyed under any circumstances. Krishna praises the gopis' pure love in the Srimad Bhagavatam 10:32-22. Which tune is this now? 1 second. Na parayeham niravadya samyujam svasadu krityam vibuhayusa piva yamam ma bhajan durjageha srinkahala samsvrichyaya tadvah prityatu sadhuna. My dear gopis, I am not able to repay my debt for you, for your spotless service. Even within a lifetime of Brahma, your connection with me is beyond reproach. You have worshipped me, cutting off all domestic ties which are difficult to break. Therefore, please let your own glorious deeds be your compensation. Hare Krishna. Okay, who wants to read this next one?
Sutra 8. Nirodhastu loga veda vyapara nyasa. Synonyms. Nirodha, renunciation. 2. Moreover, loga, of social custom. Veda, and of the revealed scripture. Vyapara, of the engagements. Nyasa, renunciation. Translation. Such renunciation in devotional service means to give up all kinds of social customs and religious rituals governed by Vedic injunctions. Purport. In a verse in the Lalita Madhava 5.2, Srila Rupa Goswami describes renunciation in devotional service. Ruddha Siddhi Vraja Vijayita Satya Dharma Samadhir Brahmanando Gururabi Chamatkarayadi Evatavat Yavat Premnam Madhu Ribu Vashikara Siddhaushadinam Gandhobi Anda Karana Sarani Pandadam Na Prayadi. Activities such as mystic trance, becoming one with the Supreme, and the religious principles of Brahmanism, such as speaking the truth and tolerance, have their own respective attractions. But when one becomes captivated by love of Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, all attraction for mystic power, monistic pleasure, and mundane religious principles becomes insignificant. In other words, by discharging pure devotional service, one attains the highest stage of love of Godhead and is freed from all other obligations, such as those mentioned in the Karma Kanda, Jnana Kanda, and Yoga Kanda sections of the Vedas. One who engages in pure devotional service has no desire to improve himself except in the service of the Lord. In such devotional service, there cannot be any worship of the impersonal or localized features of the Supreme Lord. The devotee simply performs activities that satisfy the Supreme Personality of Godhead and thus attains pure love for the Lord. Only by the combined mercy of the pure devotee, the bona fide spiritual master, and the Supreme Lord Himself can one attain pure devotional service to the Lord. If someone is fortunate enough to find a pure devotee and accept him as his spiritual master, then this spiritual master, out of his causeless mercy, will impart the knowledge of pure devotional service. And it is the Lord, out of his causeless mercy, who sends his most confidential servitor to this world to instruct pure devotional service. To instruct pure devotional service. By the divine grace of the spiritual master, the seed of pure devotional service, which is completely different from the seed of the fruitive activities and speculative knowledge, is sown in the heart of the devotee. Then, when the devotee satisfies the spiritual master and Krishna, this seed of devotional service grows into a plant that gradually reaches up to the spiritual world. An ordinary plant requires shelter for growing. Similarly, the devotional plant grows and grows until it takes shelter in the spiritual world without taking shelter on any planet in the material world. In other words, those who are captivated by pure devotional service have no desire to elevate themselves to any material planet. The highest planet in the spiritual world is Krishnaloka or Goloka Vrindavana, and there the devotional plant takes shelter. The Narada Pancharatra defines pure devotional service as follows: Sarvobhadi vinirmuktam tat paratvena nirmalam Hrishikesha sevanam bhaktir uchyate. Chaitanya Charitamrita Madhya 19.170. Devotional service to the Supreme Lord means engagement of all the senses in His service. In such service, there are two important features. First, one must be purified of all designations, and second, the senses should be engaged only in the service of the Supreme Lord, the Master of the senses. That is pure devotional service. Everyone is now contaminated by various designations in relations to the body. Everyone is thinking, I belong to such and such country, I belong to certain society, I belong to a certain family. But when a person comes to the stage of pure devotional service, he knows that he does not belong to anything except the service of the Lord. The symptom of unflinching faith in pure devotional service is that one has overcome the many disruptive desires that impede pure devotional service, such as first one, the desire to worship the demigod, second, the desire to serve someone other than Krishna, third, the desire to work for sense gratification without understanding one's relationship with Krishna, fourth, the desire to cultivate impersonal knowledge and thereby forget the Supreme Lord, and fifth, the desire to establish oneself as the Supreme, in which endeavor there is no trace of the bliss of devotional service. One should give up all these desires and engage exclusively in the loving devotional service of the Lord. Except for the service of the Lord, anything done in the service of illusion or Maya. One should try to get out of illusion and be engaged in the factual services of Krishna. Service to Krishna utilizes all the senses, and when the senses are engaged in the service of Krishna, they become purified. There are 10 senses, 5 active senses, and 5 knowledge acquiring senses. The active senses are the power of talking, the hands, the legs, the evacuating outlet, and the generating organ. The knowledge acquiring senses are the eyes, the ears, the nose, the tongue, and the sense of touch. The mind, the center of all the senses, is sometimes considered the 11th sense. One cannot engage in the transcendental loving service of the Lord with these senses in their present materially covered state. Therefore, one should take up the process of devotional service to purify them. There are 64 items of regulated devotional service for purifying the senses, and one should strenuously undergo such regulative service. Then one can enter into the transcendental loving service of the Lord. See text 12 for a full discussion of the 64 items of devotional service. Hare Krishna.
Prabhu, can I read? Hare Krishna, Prabhu, can I read?
Hare
Yes,
Krishna,
Prabhu.
yes, Prabhu.
Yes. Sutra 9. Loka Vedeshu tad anukulam charanam tad virodeshu the shaninata. Translation and commentary for this verse by disciples of Srila Prabhupada. Okay. Sutra 10. This same thing, Prabhu. The translation by disciples.
Yes, Prabhu, you can read the verse.
Okay. Loka Vedeshu tad anukula charanam tad virodhishu dasinata. Sutra 11. Loka Vedeshu tad anukula charanam tad virodhishu dasinata. Synonyms. Loka. In society and politics, Vedeshu, in the Vedic rituals, Tat for that, Anukula, of what is favorable, Acharanam, performance, Tat for that, Virudhishu, for what is opposed, Udasinata, indifference. Translation. Indifference toward what stands in the way of devotional service means to accept only those activities of social customs and Vedic injunction that are favorable to devotional service. Purport. Material existence is a life of revolt against the Supreme Personality of Godhead. There are many ways in which the living entities can manifest the spirit of revolt. Please scroll it up. There are many ways in which the living entities can manifest the spirit of revolt, such as engaging in fruitive activities, mental speculation, or mystic yoga to achieve material perfections. Generally, all conditioned souls desire to lord it over the material nature. Everyone wants to become a demilord, either by social or political activities or by Vedic rituals. Everyone wants to elevate himself to a higher status of existence, or out of frustration becomes one with the Supreme. All these desires are different type of materialism. They are not favorable for devotional service. A pure devotee rejects demigods worship and worships uh, yes, only Lord Krishna or his Vishnu expansions. Until a person is completely free of material contamination, he might want to worship God in hope of fulfilling material desires. But even if a person has material desires, if he scrupulously, what is written? Scrupulously, sorry, worships the Supreme Lord, he will very soon become purified of all such desires. On the other hand, persons whose activities are dedicated by material desires and who are also addicted to worshipping the demigods cannot become pure devotees at any stage of their lives. The Lord, situated within everyone's heart, fulfills the desires of the demigod worshippers. But in the Bhagavad Gita, the Lord says that such demigod worshippers are of small intelligence, Alpa Medha Shaha. In other words, as long as one is controlled by the modes of material nature, one will prone to worship the demigods for material purposes. But one who curbs this tendency and worship Krishna exclusively can arise above the modes and attain pure devotional service. One cannot be situated on the platform of pure devotional service. However, unless one is freed from all kinds of sinful reaction, to counteract various sinful reactions, there are prescribed duties in the ritualistic section of the Vedas, and those in the lower stage of life can become freed from all sinful reactions by strictly following the Vedic ritualistic process. Then they can become situated in pure devotional service. Thus, it should be understood that a person who is situated in pure devotional service must have in his past life already executed all the Vedic rituals with great determination. In other words, after reaching the stage of devotional service, a person does not have to execute any process of atonement in the ritualistic section of the Vedas. He is already sinless. Sutra number 12. भवतु निश्चया दर्धयात् दर्धयात् ऊर्ध्वं शास्त्ररक्षणम्. Synonyms. Bhavatu, let there be. Nishchaya, of certainly. Dardhayat, the firm fixing. Udhavam, after. Shastra, of scripture. Rakshanam, the observance. Translation. One must continue to follow scriptural injunction even after one is fixed up in determined certainly certainty that devotional service is not is the only means for reaching the perfection of life. Purport: when a person becomes firmly convinced about the importance of devotional service, he surrenders unto the Supreme Lord. There are six symptoms of surrender. One should perform only those actions favorable for devotional service to Krishna. Second, one should give up everything unfavorable for discharging devotional service. Third, one should firmly believe that Krishna will protect one in all circumstances and that no one is better protected than Krishna. This conviction should be distinct from the monastic philosophy that one is as good as Krishna. Rather, one should always think that Krishna or God is great and that one is always protected by him. Both. One should have the conviction that Krishna is one's maintainer and one should not take shelter of any demigod or maintenance. 5. One should always remember that one's activity and desires are not independent. In other words, the devotee should feel completely dependent on Krishna, and thus he should act and think as Krishna's desire. 6. One should always think himself the poorest of the poor and feel totally dependent on the mercy of Krishna. A devotee who follows these six principles of surrender always think, "O Lord, I am yours in every respect. I am your eternal servant." In this way, pure devotees become cleansed. There is a nice verse in the connection in the Srimad Bhagavatam 11.34. Marte yada tyakta samasta karma nivedita viviki irshyo me tadam ratavam Pratipadayamano Mayatma Bhuvaya Cha Kalpate Vaye. A person who gives up all fruitive activities and offers himself entirely into unto me, eagerly desiring to render service unto me, achieves liberation from birth and death, and is promoted to the status of sharing my own opulences. To be elevated to such a point of devotional service, one has to execute the directions of the scriptures. But even after becoming elevated in devotional life, one should not think, "Oh, I'm already elevated to the highest stage of stages. Therefore, therefore I may violate the scriptural regulation for executing devotional service." Devotional service is, devotional service is dormant in every living being. For my nature, every living being is part and parcel of the Supreme Lord, and it is a healthy condition of the part to serve the whole. It is just like the situation of the parts of the body. The hand and the legs serve the body. Similarly, as part and parcel of the Supreme Lord, every living entity is bound to serve the Supreme Lord in a healthy condition. When he is not thus engaged, he is in a diseased condition. But as soon as he engages all his senses in the transcendental loving service of the Lord, he is in normal, healthy condition. The devotee should engage his uh, one second, senses in the Lord's service according to the direction of the authoritative scriptures and under the guidance of the bona fide spiritual master. The beginning of one's spiritual training is to engage the ear in oral reception of the teaching of the Bhagavad Gita and the Srimad Bhagavatam. There are many authoritative books of spiritual knowledge, but all of them are more or less supplements to the Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam. Even in the Narada Bhakti Sutra is a summary of the Bhagavad Gita and the Srimad Bhagavatam. Therefore, the beginning of devotional service is to hear these two important transcendental books of knowledge. Simply by oral reception of these two books from the bona fide spiritual master, one becomes enlightened about devotional service, which is dormant within the heart. Devotional service executed under the guidance of the spiritual master and according to scriptural injunction is called a Vaidhi Bhakti, a part of Sadhana Bhakti, a devotional service in practice. The other devotion of Sadhana Bhakti is Raganuga Bhakti, spontaneous devotional service. One who wishes to advance to the platform of Raganuga Bhakti must follow the injunction of the authoritative scriptures under the direction of the spiritual master. According to Sutra 12, even a person on a highly elevated platform of devotional service must execute the rules and regulation of the scripture. What to speak of persons who are not elevated? In other words, neophytes in devotional service must strictly and uh, scrupulously follow the rule and regulation of the scriptures to rise to the platform of unalloyed devotional service. As mentioned above, such strict practice of regulative devotional service is called Vaidhi Bhakti. The prime principle of Vaidhi Bhakti is stated in the Srimad Bhagavatam 2.1.5. Tasmat Bharata Sarvatma Bhagavan Ishvara Harihi Shreyotavya Kirtaitavya cha Samartavyas Checha Tabhayam. A person serious about making progress in devotional service must always think of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, must always chant his glories, and must always hear about his activities. These are the preliminary principles of following the sculptured rules and regulations. The Srimad Bhagavatam 11.5.2 states, one second, Prabhu, there is so much sound. The Srimad Bhagavatam SB 11.5.2 states, Mukhya Bahurua Padevaya Purushayasya Ramihi Saha Chatparo Jajanire Varna Gunair Viparadaya Pratak. Every person, whatever he may be, emanates from some part of the universe. Prabhu, actually there is so much sound. Can you please read, because there are Lakshmi Puja, na? There is Lakshmi Puja.
Yes, Prabhu. Thank you so much for reading. Every person, whatever he may be, emanates from some part of the universal form of the Supreme Lord, the Virat Purusha. The Brahmanas, intelligentsia, emanate from the face. The Kshatriyas, warriors and administrators, emanate from the arms. The Vaishyas, farmers and merchants, emanate from the thighs, and the Shudras, laborers, emanate from the feet. But wherever we may be situated, we have some particular function to execute in the service of the Supreme Whole, the Personality of Godhead. If we do not, therefore, engage our particular propensities in the service of the Lord, then we are fallen, just like a useless limb amputated from the body. According to Padma Purana, the sum and substance of all the regulative principles of the scripture is that Lord Vishnu or Krishna should always be remembered and should never be forgotten. We should therefore mold our lives in such a way that in every activity we shall be able to remember the Supreme Lord. Any activity that reminds one of the Supreme Lord is a regulative principle in devotional service. And any activity that makes one forget the Supreme Lord is a forbidden activity for a devotee. In the Chaitanya Charitamrita Madhya 22, 115 to 28, Lord Chaitanya lists 64 regulative principles one must follow to be elevated to the highest platform of devotional service, and as stressed here in Sutra 12, even after being elevated to the highest platform of devotional service, one must continue following the scriptural injunctions for devotional life. The 64 regulative principles are as follows. Now comes a long list. 1. To accept a bona fide spiritual master. To become initiated by the spiritual master. To engage oneself in the service of the spiritual master. Yeah, this come in like sequence. This is what you first do. This is the second stage. And
Prabhu, can you please do one thing? Take a screenshot or copy these things and upload on the group.
All these.
Yes, 64. Maybe if possible.
Yes, Prabhu. 3. To engage oneself in the service of the spiritual master. 4. To receive instructions from the spiritual master and inquire about advancing on the path of devotional service. To follow in the footsteps of previous acharyas and follow the directions given by the spiritual master. To give up anything for the satisfaction of Krishna and to accept anything for the satisfaction of Krishna. To live in a place where Krishna is present, a city like Vrindavan or Mathura or Krishna temple. To minimize one's means of living as much as one can, while living comfortably to execute devotional service. To observe fasting days such as Ekadashi. To worship cows, Brahmanas, Vaishnavas, and sacred trees like the banyan. These 10 principles of devotional service are the beginning. Additional principles are as follows. Yeah, these 10 are the beginning. And in every of these, there is the instruction to follow the spiritual master. Almost in every one of these 10, it's inquiring, first accepting, then becoming initiated, then inquiring, then receiving the instructions, then acting on the instructions. And the instructions must come from the previous acharyas, it's also explained. Okay, what are the next 10? These 10 principles of devotional service are the beginning. Additional principles are as follows. 11. One should avoid committing offenses against the holy name, the deity, etc. 12. One should avoid associating with non-devotees. Asat Sangatyaga. One should not aspire to have many disciples. Yes, this one. This is important to these gurus that want to initiate 100,000 disciples before they leave the body. One should not aspire to have many disciples. One should not unnecessarily divert his attention by partially studying many books so as to appear very learned. For devotional service, it is sufficient to scrutinizingly study books like the Bhagavad Gita, the Srimad Bhagavatam, and the Chaitanya Charitamrita. Yeah, this is important one. There is many people that think they need to read anything and everything, when if they only studied Bhagavad Gita nicely, they would learn all the things. 15. One should not be disturbed in either loss or gain. One should not allow oneself to be overwhelmed by lamentation for any reason. 17. One should not blaspheme the demigods. Yeah, this is important also. Often many neophyte devotees, also me included, they think that, oh, just because the demigod is not as important as Krishna, they can say anything and everything about, oh, he's not important. But they should always remember that they are devotees also. Although one should not worship them. Similarly, one should not criticize other scriptures, although one should not follow the principles therein. One should not tolerate blasphemy or of the Supreme Lord or his devotees. One should not indulge in idle talks, such as those about relationships between man and woman. 20. One should not unnecessarily disturb any living being, whatever he may be. The above mentioned 20 items are the doorway to devotional service, and among them, the first 3, namely, acceptance of the spiritual master, initiation by the spiritual master, and the service to the spiritual master, are the most important. Then come the following items. 21.
Prabhu, I'm reading. Prabhu.
Yes, Prabhu.
Then come the following items. 21. To hear about the Lord. 22. To chant his glories. 23. To remember him. 24. To serve and meditate upon the lotus feet of the Lord and his devotees. 25. To worship him. 26. To pray to him. 27. To think of oneself as the Lord's eternal servant. 28. To become the Lord's friend. 29. To offer everything to the Lord. To the Lord. 30. To dance before the deity. 31. To sing before the deity. 32. Prabhu, actually 31, 30 and 31, I think it's a Seva Aparadna.
What, Prabhu?
30, to dance before the deity and to sing before the deity. I think, is it in the Seva Aparad of the 32 list?
No, Prabhu, I'm not sure, but I don't think it's up.
Actually, there was a line where it says that no one should talk before the deity, no one should lay down before the deity, and I think no one should sing before the deity. Maybe that singing is refers to materialistic singing or anything else.
Yes, Prabhu. Yeah, that's different.
Yeah. Yes. Okay. 32. 33. To bow down to the Lord. 34. To offer respect to spiritual master and the Supreme Lord by standing up at the appropriate time. 35. To follow the spiritual master or the Supreme Lord in processions. 36. To visit places of pilgrimage and temples of the Supreme Lord. 37. To circumambulate the temple. 38. To recite prayers. 39. To chant the Lord's name softly to oneself. 40. To chant the Lord's name loudly in congregation. 41. To smell incense and flowers offered to the deity. 42. To eat the remains of food offered to the deity. 43. To regularly attend the arti offered to the deity, as well as special festivals. 44. To regularly look upon the deity. 45. To offer one's dearmost possessions to the Supreme Lord. 46. To meditate on the Lord's name from pastimes etc. 47. To water the tulsi plant. 48. To serve the Lord's devotee. 49. To try to live in Vindavana or Mathura. 50. To relish the topics of Srimad Bhagavatam. 51. To take all kinds of risks for Krishna. 52. To always expect the mercy of Krishna. 53. To observe ceremonies like Janmashtami, the appearance day of Lord Krishna, and Rama Navami, the appearance day of Lord Ramachandra, with devotees. 54. To fully surrender to Krishna. 55. To observe special regulation like those followed during the month of Kartika, October and November. 56. To mark the body with Vaishnava Tilaka, clay marking. 57. To mark the body with the holy names of God. 58. To accept the remains of garlands that have been offered to the Supreme Lord. 59. To drink Charanamrita, the water that has washed the lotus feet of the deity. Among these 59 items, 5 are considered so important that they are mentioned again separately. Thus, completing the 64 items of devotional service, these 5 are 60. Associating with devotees. 61. Chanting the holy name of Lord. 62. Hearing the Srimad Bhagavatam. 63. Residing at the place of pilgrimage like Mathura. And 64. Worshipping the deity with faith and veneration. Sutra 13. Anyatha patiya shankaya. Synonyms. Anyatha, otherwise. Patitya, of falling down. Shankaya, because of anticipating an possibility. Translation. Otherwise, there is every possibility of falling down. Purport. If a diseased person is being cured of the symptoms of his disease but does not care for the principle of healthy living, there is every possibility of a relapse. Simply, the neophyte devotee serious about advancing in devotional service must carefully follow the principles of regulative devotional service. Otherwise, there is very possibility of this falling down. Secretly speaking, if a devotee ignores the regulative principle and acts according to his whims, if, for example, he does not eat Krishna Prasadam but eats anywhere and everywhere, such as in restaurants, there is every possibility of his falling down. If he accumulates money without spending it for devotional service, there is every possibility of his falling down. If he applies his energy not in the service of the Lord but in some material activity, there is every possibility of his falling down. If the devotee does not engage himself always in hearing and chanting the topics of Krishna and his activities, but instead indulge in an idle talk, there is every chance of falling down. If a neophyte devotee does not follow the orders of the spiritual master and simply officially stick to the principles, or if he does not strictly follow the principles, there is every possibility of his falling down. To become greedy is another cause of fall down, and to associate with persons who are not in devotional service is the last word is Maya's allurements of causing a devotee to fall down. The Bhagavad Gita 18.5. Krishna clearly said the sacrifice, charity, and penance are never to be given up by the transcendentalist. If he is at all intelligent, he must continue these three activities. Even if he is highly elevated, devotee is naturally very humble, and even if he is highly elevated, he does not consider himself to be so. A practical example is found in the life of the author of Chaitanya Charitamrita, Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami. He was a very vastly learned scholar and a first-class devotee, yet he still referred to himself as the lowest of mankind, lower than the bacteria in stool. He wrote that he was so sinful that no one should even utter his name, lest that person fall down. Of course, when a great devotee speaks this way, we should not believe that he is actually in the lowest stages of life. We should rather take it as evidence that out of humility, a pure devotee never thinks is elevated. He always thinks is in the lowest status of spiritual life. As stated above in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna states that no one should give up the sacrificial portion of spiritual life, and the scriptures recommended that the best sacrifice in this age of Kali is to chant the Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. A devotee, therefore, devotee prime duty is to continue chanting this Mahamantra, even if he is highly elevated. Otherwise, at any stage, one can fall down. Sutra 14. लोके पीतवद् एव भोजनादि व्यापारस्तव्या शरीरा dharanavadhi. Synonyms. Lok. In social behavior. Api. Also. Tavat. For that long. Eva. In need. Bhojana. Eating. Adi. And so on. Vyaparaha. The activity. To. And. A sarira dharmana avadhi. For as long as one still has this body. Translation. For as long as the body lasts, one should engage heavily in social and political activities and in such matters as eating. One should engage. Purport. Spiritual life begins when a person understands that he is not the body. In the material world, all our connections, whether social or political, or in the field of eating, sleeping, defending, and mating, are due only to the material body. Unless one is completely conversant with this fact, with the fact that one is not the body, it is not possible to be self-realized. In the Bhagavad Gita 18.54, Lord Krishna describes civilization as follows: Brahma bhutaha prasanatma na shoshati na kangshasi samaha sarveshu bhuteshu madbhaktim labhate param. Civilization. The Brahmas Bhuta, Srimad Bhagavatam 4.30.20 stage, is symptomized by joyfulness. One never laments for any loss, nor in one very enthusiastic when there is some gain. One sees everyone on an equal level through spiritual understanding. His qualities are primarily to entering into pure devotional service. Pure devotional service is so powerful, however, that one may at once take to it without acquiring the previous qualification of Brahma Bhuta life. A sincere devotee who engages in the service of the Lord automatically becomes situated in the Brahma Bhuta stage. The devotee's duty is only to strict follow the principle of regulative devotional service. As previously mentioned, therefore, a devotee should not be too concerned about social and political obligations. Since all such activities belongs to the body, he should similarly restrict his eating. This is essential to the execution of devotional service. The devotee cannot eat anything and everything he likes. He must eat only food that have been offered to the Lord. The the Lord clearly says Bhagavad Gita 9.26 that he will accept a flower, a fruit, a leaf, a little water if they offer to him with devotional love. One should note that the Supreme Lord accepts only foods from the vegetable kingdom as well as milk products. Water includes milk and its products. The Lord is not hungry or poor in need of our offering. Actually, it is to our advantage to offer him something to eat. If the Supreme Lord kindly accepts our offering, then we are benefited. The Lord is full, but to establish that universal principle that everyone can offer something to the Lord, He accepts even the most meager offering when it's presented with love. Even the poorest of the poor can collect a flower, a leaf, a little water, offer them to the Supreme Lord. It is incumbent upon all devotees of Krishna to avoid eating anything that has not been offered to the Supreme Lord. A devotee who does not strictly follow the principle is sure to fall down. Similarly, one who refuses to accept prasadam, the remnants of food offered to Krishna, cannot become a devotee. In the Srimad Bhagavatam 5.3, Lord Rishabhadeva states that one who is determined to become a pure devotee avoids associating with a general mass of people who are simply engaged in the animal propensities of eating, sleeping, defending, and mating. Um, 5.5.3. Wait, let me note this. Thank you, Prabhu. In the Srimad Bhagavatam 5.5.3, Lord Rishabhadeva states that one who is determined to become a pure devotee avoids associating with the general mass of people who are simply engaged in the animal propensities of eating, sleeping, defending, and mating. The general mass of people mistake the body for the self, and therefore they are always busy trying to maintain the body very nice. A devotee should not associate with such people, nor should be overly attached to his family members, knowing that these has been accidentally thrown together with his wife, children, and so on. Spiritually, no one is wife, child, and husband or father of anyone else. Everyone comes into the world associating to past deeds and takes shelter of a father or mother. But actually, no one is anyone's father or mother. While a devotee must know this, that does not mean that he should neglect his family. As a matter of duty, he should maintain his family members without attachment and instruct them in Krishna consciousness. So, whether in social life or political life, or in the matter of eating, sleeping, mating, and defending, a devotee should avoid performing any action stained by material attachment. The word used here is bhojanadi, which indicates the four propensities of eating, sleeping, defending, and mating, as a devotee does not eat anything that has not been offered to Krishna. So he does not sleep more than is absolutely necessary. In the lives of the great devotees Sanatana Goswami, Rupa Goswami, we see that they did not sleep more than 1.5 hours a day, and they were reluctant even to accept that. So sleeping is also restricted. Naturally, one who is always engaged in devotional service of the Lord has very little time to sleep. Sleep is a necessity of the body, not the spiritual soul, and therefore, as one advances in devotional service, one's propensity to sleep decreases. Similarly, a devotee minimizes his defending propensity. A pure devotee knows he is under the shelter of the all-powerful Supreme Lord, and so he is not very anxious about defending himself. Although he should use his common sense in the matter of defending, he is sure that without being protected by Lord Krishna, no one can defend himself. However, except he may be in the art of defense. In the same way, a devotee minimizes or eliminates sex. He does not indulge indiscriminately in sex, begetting offspring as the cats and dogs do. If he begets any children at all, he takes charge of them to elevate them to Krishna consciousness, so that they may not have to suffer in the material life again in future lives. That is the duty of a devotee. In the material world, people in general engage in sense gratificatory activities which keep them bound up by the laws of natural modes of nature. Indeed, the more a person engages in such activities, the more it expands his life and material existence. A devotee acts differently. He knows that he is not the body, and that as long as he is in the body, he will live to suffer. Mr. Prabhu, I have to go.
Yes, Prabhu. Thank you so much for reading. He will have to suffer the threefold material miseries. Therefore, to decrease his material entanglement and help his advancement in spiritual life, he always minimizes his social and political activities and his eating, sleeping, defending, and mating. Chapter 2. Defining Bhakti. Sutra 15. Talakshanani vachyantena matabedat. Synonyms. Tat, of it, devotional service. Lakshanani, the characteristics. Vachyante, are enunciated. Nana, various. Mata, of theories. Vedat, according to the differences. Translation. Now, the characteristics of devotional service will be described according to the various authoritative opinions. Purport. In the Srimad Bhagavatam 7.5.23, Prahlad Maharaj very clearly states what the essential activities of devotional service are. Shravanam Kirtanam Vishnu Smaranam Padasevanam Archanam Vandanam Dasyam Sakyam Atmanivedanam. Devotional service consists of 1. Hearing about the Lord. 2. Chanting his glories. 3. Remembering him. 4. Serving and meditating upon his lotus feet. 5. Worshipping him. 6. Praying to him, thinking oneself his eternal servant. 8. Becoming his friend. And 9. Surrendering everything to him. So everything starts from hearing, Shravanam. When we hear, then comes the chanting, Kirtanam. And after you hear and chant, then what happens? Automatically, this remembering, Smaranam. And then after we remember the Lord, we can come to the stage of serving and meditating upon the lotus feet. One should surrender to the Lord as much as animal purchased from the market surrenders to its master. Such an animal never thinks of his maintenance because he knows that his master will look after him. A soul totally surrendered to the Supreme Lord is similarly never anxious for his maintenance. Srila Sanatana Goswami gives further symptoms of full surrender in his Hari Bhakti Vilas 11.676. Anukulyasya sankalpa pratikulyasya varjanam rakshishyatiti vishvaso koptritve varanam tata atmanikshepa karpanye sadvidha sharanagati. The 6 divisions of surrender are accepting those things favorable to devotional service, rejecting the unfavorable things, the conviction that Krishna will give protection, accepting the Lord as one's guardian or master, full surrender, full self-surrender, and humility. Narada will gradually explain these principles of devotion in the remaining sutras. The end. Okay, here ends the book. Haribol. Okay, now let's go to Six Astakam prayers. Yes, this was really nice book. It's really, everything was given in, I forgot the word, but what it is. What's this word? Yeah, it was summarized really nicely, everything in that small book. Okay, Haribol. Cheto darpanamarjanam bhavamaha davagni nirvapanam shreyah kairava chandrika vitaranam vidyavadu jivanam anandam buddhivardhanam pratipadam purnamritasvadanam sarvatma snapanam param vijayate Sri Krishna Sankirtanam.
नाम्ना मगारि बहुधा च सर्वशक्तिस्तत्रार्पिता नियमिता स्मरणेन काल एतादृशी तव कृपा भगवन्ममापि दुर्दैवमिदृशाम् इहाजनिनानुरागा
Trinadapi sunicena tarorapi sahishnuna amanina manadena kirtaniya sada hari.
न जनम न सुन्दरीं कवितां वा जगदीशकामये मम जन्मनि जन्मनीश्वरे भवताद्भक्तिरहेतुकी त्वयि
Ainanda tanuja kinkaram patitamam vishame bhavam putau kripa tava pada pankaja sthita duli sadrisam vichintaya.
नयनं गलादश्रुधारया वदनं गद्गदहृदया गिरा पुलकेर्निजितं वपुकथा तव नाम गृहिणी भविष्यति
Yugaitam nimeshena chakshusha pravirsya itam shunya itam jagat sarvam govinda virahena me.
आश्लिष्यवापादकृतां विनष्टुमाम् अदर्शनामर्महतां करोतु वा यदा तथा वा विदधातु लम्पटो प्राणमादस्तु स एव नापर
Haribol. Glory to the Sri Krishna Sankirtan, which cleanses the heart of all the dust accumulated for years and extinguishes the fire of conditional life of repeated birth and death. This Sankirtan movement is the prime benediction for humanity at large because it spreads the rays of the benediction moon. It is the life of all transcendental knowledge. It increases the ocean of transcendental bliss, and it enables us to fully taste the nectar for which we are always anxious.
O my Lord, your holy name alone can render all benediction to living beings, and thus you have hundreds and millions of names like Krishna and Govinda. In these transcendental names, you have invested all your transcendental energies. There are not even hard and fast rules for chanting these names. O my Lord, out of kindness, you enable us to easily approach you by your holy names. But I am so unfortunate that I have no attraction.
One should chant the holy name of the Lord in a humble state of mind, thinking oneself lower than the straw in the street. One should be more tolerant than a tree, devoid of all sense of false prestige, and should be ready to offer all respect to others. In such a state of mind, one can chant the holy name of the Lord constantly.
O Almighty Lord, I have no desire to accumulate wealth, nor do I desire beautiful women, nor do I want any number of followers. I only want your causeless devotional service, birth after birth.
O son of Maharaj Nanda, Krishna, I am your eternal servitor, yet somehow or other I have fallen into the ocean of birth and death. Please pick me up from this ocean of death and place me as one of the atoms at your lotus feet.
When I chant your holy name, when will my voice choke up, and when will the hairs of my body stand on end at the recitation?
O Govinda, feeling your separation, I'm considering a moment to be like 12 years or more. Tears are flowing from my eyes like torrents of rain, and I'm feeling all vacant in the world in your absence.
I know no one but Krishna is my Lord, and he shall remain so, even if he handles me roughly by his embrace, or makes me broken-hearted by not being present before me. He is completely free to do anything and everything, for he is always my worshipful Lord, unconditionally.
हरि बोल। श्री शिक्षाष्टकम की जाय, हरिनाम संकीर्तन की जाय, पंचतत्व की जाय, नित्यानंद प्रभु की जाय, श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य महाप्रभु की जाय, जगत गुरु शिला भक्ति वेदांत स्वामी शिला प्रभुपाद की जाय, निताय गौर प्रेमानंदे। हरि हरि बोल।